Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Week in Indies for June 6th, 2021. It's nice to have you all here. We've got a great show ahead for you. We're going to talk about the loneliness of being a writer with the roundtable discussion, and Seal Cannon has a great indie connection for us. But first, I'm going to introduce you to a film that you probably have heard me wax on and wax off about before, but this is the trailer to my favorite film from 2020, and then I'm going to come back and do a live retro review about it, so hang tight.
I have this neighbor, and he smokes cigarettes. He smokes cigarettes outside. I would occasionally talk to him while we were both out there smoking. He'd start to talk in this heavily Russian accent about how he has something that's worth a lot of money. He comes back up to my apartment a couple minutes later, just brings in a duffel bag. If I could hold on to it for him for a couple of weeks while he was out of town, that'd be great. He starts taking out these books and books of stamps. He had stated that they were somewhere between like 1 and 2 million. These are wildly expensive stamps. Why on earth would you ask me to hold this ridiculously expensive stamp collection? And his words were, "You don't know me and I don't know you, and you have nothing against me. I'm assuming," which is what he said. I said, "No, of course not." And he said, "Right, good."
And how long has it been now?
It's been months. What on earth happened, right? I know his previous address.
And you don't have his last name?
No.
And you said he was Russian, right?
Penny blacks could be worth up to 30,000 pounds. Who knows what else is in here then? There's also this article, one of these penny blacks being stolen from a collector.
When you went to the police station, you didn't tell him you had these, did you? Or did you?
It's a frightening prospect to get close to the guy whose stamps these are.
They're not going to have any issues going after you and getting rid of you.
In this strange, endemic world of stamp collecting, I don't know what I'm doing.
Is that a tattoo?
It is. It's actually my father's initials. He was a con man.
Are there parts of you that remind you of your father?
He was an excellent father. He just happened to be like a total sociopathic liar. Most of my life is dictated around just trying to be as honest as possible.
It's odd. It's very odd. People can say one thing and be completely different.
There's easy money to be made out there if you're really unscrupulous, but I love money. I love money.
This is not just a little stamp collection. There's more to this. It's like you got all the puzzle pieces and you know you have all the pieces. How do you put them together?
You need some sunshine. You need some daylight.
Yes, The Penny Black is the name of the film. It's actually a documentary, believe it or not, but it does not play like a documentary. If you're a fan of like noir film or murder mysteries, murder mystery is probably not the realm, but mystery nonetheless, true crime even, I think you're going to really enjoy a film like this. It is a narrative within a film. It is shot superbly. I mean, for any person out there who's a cinephile, some of the shots in this film are breathtaking and just you're blown away by it. It's absolutely. I'm so excited that it's finally out for everybody to see. And it is out. It is out everywhere on video on demand, and you can read a more thorough review of what I wrote about it on our blog at freshbutteredpopcorn.com. That's our GoIndieNow movie review blog. And I'll plan on doing some music and some books eventually over there as well. But that is where I did a real thorough review of it. But just to give people some substance and some idea of what this movie is, it's told through the eyes of the gentleman that you saw was shaving his head and talking. His name is Will, and he, as you saw, was given the stamp collection by a shady neighbor. And it turns out that Will's not everything he seems, and there's some really interesting moments and some twists and turns. And just when you think you haven't twisted enough, you're going to twist again. I'm not even sure this movie ends, to be honest with you. That's how incredibly twisty and crazy it gets, and it's insane. It's absolutely like I've never imagined that stamp collecting would ever be interesting at all. And this is like, I was riveted. I couldn't believe that 95 minutes went by so fast. It was a blink of an eye. And that's the kind of movies that I love. I love movies that make you think. This movie will make you think. It'll make you question, and it will do a lot of introspective things in terms of, feelings that you might have about certain things and certain ideas. Yes, it is that crazy of a movie. But that being said, everybody should go check out The Penny Black. It is out everywhere. Amazon Prime, Vudu. I think it's on YouTube. It's on Google Play. So wherever you stream movies online, if you do that, you will find it. It is there. And trust me, it is the best $3.99 you'll spend this year. It is so amazing. It's a great film. I can't recommend it enough. And it was my favorite film of 2020. I got to see it at Slamdance in 2020, so I was real excited about that. And then I got to talk to the filmmakers. My interview with the filmmakers, by the way, is also on our channel, and also it is in the blog. So if you go to the blog, read the blog, it's at the bottom of the blog, the video that I did with them. I spent like an hour talking to them about this film, but I had to cut out about a half hour of it because it was all spoilers that I talked to them about. But there's a lot of great intrigue. So check that out, The Penny Black. Also, while we're here, it's time to check out our roundtable discussion. And we've got an incredible group of folks here to talk about the loneliness of being a writer. We'll get into that for sure, but let's have everybody introduce themselves first. So I'm just going to go down the line. So Anita, why don't you start us off, please?
Hello, I'm Anita Stewart. I write under AF Stewart. I write horror, fantasy, poetry, steampunk. I host 2 podcasts, and I have just opened a pre-made cover site, so I do a lot of stuff.
Nice. All of which we'll be able to, you'll be able to get the links to in our description today. And all right, Miss Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie. I primarily run killersanddemons.com. It's a place for tales of dark crime and horror. I also have some nonfiction inspirational as well, and I'm just working on hooking the 2 up because it's really hard to, they're 2 totally different things, so I'm just figuring out how to hook them up, but you can find all of it in one place.
I have a feeling one of these days you'll write a story about a lonely bike ride that turns into a horror movie.
Right?
Or a horror
probably
book.
should. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Pantalleresco.
Hi, I'm Josh. I write stuff and podcasts too. I was here let's see. I have my podcast, Just Joshing, approaching its 600th episode actually very, very shortly. And I got a really cool book announcement in 9 days. So I can't wait.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Can we get a little teaser today?
So it's a game of croquet between Jason of the Argonauts and Alice in Wonderland.
Ooh, all right. Nice.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you for that exclusive little teaser. I appreciate it. I sent an article that I found on the BBC website. Actually, was about loneliness of writing, and it really was centered around the COVID, aspect of things a little bit, and kind of reflecting back on that time period and how much did that person who was doing the article was kind of an editorial on what they really, or people that they knew were really experiencing during that time and feeling. And it kind of struck me because I was thinking, the idea of a writer is so solitary, and it's always been. This is nothing new. I think people are discovering that, being in your own head and only in your own head 24/7 for a very long time can be disconcerting just as much as, us spending 3 or 4 months, or, in Anita's case, 2 weeks, because she writes books like it's recipes. She's so great she's prolific. She puts out, I don't know, how many books have you put out this year already, Anita? Like 4?
I haven't put any books out this year.
Oh wow, whoa! It's a slow year.
I'm writing 4, but I haven't put any out yet.
But yeah, I mean, you put out like 6 last year, so 5 maybe.
No, I
4?
think I only put out 2 last year. Well, I did have some. I think I may have some short stories. There was a short story collection last year too.
So I mean, it's just like it is interesting because we look at the two solitaries differently too, which I thought this article did a pretty good job of capturing. And I'm just curious from all of your perspectives to start with, what you thought of, the idea of solitary being a little different, or, that you're just used to it. And yeah, it's part of who we are. And it's what we do, right?
Yeah, well, I'm used to it.
So, do you want me?
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
I have thoughts. And then I have a big mouth, so everybody knows that I got a big mouth. So I remember like the first time I really truly felt alone was when I was in Arizona at like my really lowest point, and and it was just, I was going through my own little personal trial in life. And the thing about that was, I remember something about, and this was the thing that struck me about loneliness, and I think this is why to some degree writing is always considered a very solitary thing. You can't run and hide from yourself when you're alone. You are literally, the only thing there that you know for sure is going to be there day in and out is you. And I think if you're in that space long enough, you discover things about yourself that you never knew existed. And I think honestly, especially in small dosages, I think loneliness is actually a great thing, because it forces you to be honest with yourself. I tend to think writing is very much, no matter what you're writing, is a reflection of the person writing it on some level. And there are things there are things when we write we feel the need to say, because we're conveying a message. Even though we're telling a story, we're conveying a message. And I think that loneliness, that time where it's just you and the keyboard, or you and the thing, whatever the story, piece of art, whatever it is you do, there has to be a raw feeling and honesty. And I think to some degree that quiet, that silence where it's just you and just you, is absolutely vital for the process.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, well said. I think for me, like, I actually distinguish between being solitary and being lonely. And I think, so before COVID, I wrote my first novel, and I actually did by choice. I was alone a lot, because I do agree with what Josh said, that for me, to really tap into representing some very dark characters and showing how it really feels for them, I tapped into those emotions for myself. So there was a certain point where my husband actually did ask me, like, are you all right? You seem like your energy is so weird. And so that was a good learning process for me to be able to do that, but learn how to purge those energies after and spend time with people after. And so what I was doing before COVID was actually signing up for classes and joining groups and writing with other people. Well, of course, when that got taken away, I chose to be really proactive, because for me, I do like to write alone and get it done and get into that space, but I need a balance, and I know I do. And so I've actually been able to find some fantastic groups, people not even in my city or in my country, and really build some bonds virtually, which it's never quite the same, but it's surprising how good it can be. And so I think that's important too, is if you know you need a balance, is to find out how to take care of yourself through that. Because I'm with Josh. I will go so deep into that dark character and representing him or her, and then it reflects on how I feel. And it's easy to just hibernate, COVID or no COVID, and hide from people. And we need that as artists, but we don't want to become unhealthy either.
Yeah, I agree with Julie. There's a difference between being alone and loneliness, because loneliness is a missing of company. more than, and being alone is often a choice because you need to recharge or be alone to be creative. But also, in a weird way, when you're writing, you're not always alone because you've got people in your head. I mean, they're not real people, but they're still in your head and they're still talking to you. So, I mean, for me, the process of writing is not really a solitary one because I'm listening to the people in my head, which sounds weird, maybe slightly insane, but I mean, if you're a writer, I think you get it. So, I mean, I can distinguish between the characters and myself quite a bit. So, I mean, I don't get lost in it when I'm writing.
That's a very good, interesting point. I mean, you do kind of gravitate toward that companionship of bouncing, especially when you're doing like inner dialogue with two different characters, right? And you kind of feel like you're just a privy to a conversation that, if you were just sitting on a park bench watching it happen, kind of idea. And then when you're creating the character and you're giving it a description, you're kind of involved with the character, and so you're really sort of not alone in that respect. That's kind of interesting. I like that idea.
I'd go one step further. I mean, I'm gonna call him a little movie quote here. How do you define real? Because I mean, that sounds really, 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 really lame and corny. But I mean,
right.
Really, okay. Say what you will about her right now. One of my favorite quotes in Harry Potter, the entire series, is right near the end, where Harry asks Dumbledore in King's Cross, "Is this real or is this all in my head?" And I love Dumbledore's answer because, of course, it's all in your head. But why would that make that any less real? And I honestly think that is so true. We always, just because nobody else can see what you're seeing does not make it any less real. It just means it's only something you can see. In my head at this moment in time, so in my Alice series, Alice is Pandora. She opens the box and a certain Cheshire friend is actually inside her head. I am having that relationship that I've built between those two is awesome because the cat is such an asshole. And I mean that in like the best way because he's literally there, or she. I'm not going to give that away entirely either. And there is a fun friendship bond between the cat and Alice in my story. That's sometimes it's antagonistic, sometimes it's they're there for each other, and it's one of those things like I have thoroughly enjoyed that play. It's in my head. So what? It's still real, right? And something that has to be remembered, like if you really break down what we do for an audience, we are making people hallucinate and empathize with something, with a figment of their own imagination. That's what we do. If you want to break it all wonderfully down, one word, it's all real to them, even though it's all in their head. So so I mean, the only thing I'm gonna say is, so like, and I do kind of agree with Anita and Julie. There's a difference between solitude and loneliness, but in that solitude, you have to listen. At some point, you must listen, or it becomes incredibly painful to be in that space. So that's just the way it is. So there is a value in solitude, more so the silence of it and what it says to you. And anyone that's actually been in that space for any reason knows that sometimes silence is the noisiest thing of all.
Well, we have a comment here that Paul White says it's the only way to write. Nothing else allows you to put your soul into the story. Very interesting perspective. For those of us who write very darkly, though, sometimes being alone and with those dark thoughts and dealing with the dark characters that we're developing and stuff like that. Does that change your solitude at all? Does that feel any different for you? Do you have to feel like you have to interact with people after dealing with that? Do you feel like you have to do something different? Put on a Disney movie or anything like that to kind of figure that out?
No.
No?
No.
I do. Because I did a lot of research into real serial killers, and I've been researching them for so long. And so in my books, I represent the detective and the serial killer as equal points of view. And so I guess and I also have a high level of empathy. Like if I go to a retreat and somebody's crying because of something and we're all sharing, I'll cry. So what happens, but it's good, is I can actually feel what it's like to be that person who is struggling with needing to hurt somebody and has this sickness in their head. And so I feel all of the sadness and darkness and loneliness that character feels, which I don't think is a bad thing, because I think it helps me get the emotion out on the page. And I've had people tell me their favorite character is sometimes a serial killer, because they've related so much to him or her. So for me, and it's a personal choice, I know I don't want to carry that. And so I do a lot of things. I like to go outside a lot. I'm a wilderness person. I bike, I hike, I meditate, I purge energy. And so as long as I've just even spent a few minutes at the end of the day, or I go outside and do some sort of activity, I clear my mind, just because I'll carry that energy and I don't want to. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think for me, it's a thing to learn how to tap into it and use it to write really well, and then take care of myself afterwards.
Interesting. I've had the same experience with my antagonist, and actually people are really get upset with me about talking about, why'd you make me like this person, kind of thing. And it's like, it always makes me smile. I'm deviously smiling when that happens. But yeah. Kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't work like that for me, because I can sit down, I can write as the character, and then it's over, it's done, I'm back to me. It's like I'm switching personalities almost, and it's kind of an odd experience, I guess. But because I know most writers I talk to who write the dark characters seem to get emotionally invested. But for me, it's like, no, I sit down, I'm the character, I write their story, stop writing their story, I'm me again. So it doesn't bother me at all.
I think the thing is we're all like, if we were to be very honest with ourselves, sometimes it's almost like we don't write the story. We're almost like we're conduits to whatever it is we're coming up with. And there are pieces of ourselves that kind of come out when we're creating, and that's what makes it interesting. I think there's a point like where Julie gets to. It's like where we put so much of our own energy into it. Like, I don't know about you, but I like bad guys to me are kind of fun at first, at least for a little while, because you get to say and do things that you wouldn't normally get to at first. But there's a point to where you're just in that headspace for a very long time. I remember I tried to do a noir story, and it was incredibly dark. I mean, it opens up with a prison raid scene and it just gets darker. And I tried it, and I just couldn't stay in that headspace. I just couldn't do it. It was just one of those situations where I learned something very valuable about myself doing that story. I don't necessarily have to like my characters, but I have to respect them. And I didn't respect the character I was writing, and I just didn't like feeling that way, and I just didn't have it in me to finish that story. So it was just like,
That's the hard part sometimes with darker stories, is finding the humanity. Finding what you would bring to that character, and that can get harrowing if you get really, really dark sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I understand C.S. Lewis did Screw Tape Letters, and that was the hardest thing for him. Was Screw Tape was fun in small dosages for him, but towards the end, because he was in that space for a very extended period of time, it was just like he only could do one, and I understood it. Like, there's when you do darker characters, like there is I think for all of us almost like a breaking point somewhere where we like, okay, you know what I need? I need something incredibly silly right now, because I've been in this space for a very, very, very long time. Anita, I am incredibly jealous that you can actually just go gun.
It ruined Truman Capote. I mean, Truman Capote dealt in cold blood. I mean, he was making a true crime account, but in a real life situation. But he never recovered after all the things he discovered, and was, when he got into the soul, it destroyed him. He turned on himself, and it was crazy. His story is probably even more interesting than the book, and the book is fantastic. It's my favorite book of all time. But it's like it's just crazy how that introspection can leak into a person's soul, like you were saying, Josh. I mean, it's crazy. But Paul was channeling you here, and he says, I have some really dark stuff just right for character. After all, they are real, just in your head, no less than real people, asked Dumbledore. So I was also thinking about a quote from a movie that's less impressive, but from Goodfellas, when Ray Liotta's character Henry Hill says, when he first met Jimmy, he's the kind of guy that roots for the bad guys in the movies. It just kind of gives you everything you need to know about that guy's character and how but that's the interesting thing, right? Is like I think I can safely say, I've been spent 24 hours with most of you, and Josh is probably the closest I've come to that, but I can safely say that you all have really good souls. So, it's not the darkness that corrupts you. It's, or you're not mad. So I think it's okay.
I'm openly crazy. Don't worry about it.
Well, you're a good kind of crazy. You're not that.
Well, maybe that's the secret. Maybe we have to be crazy.
Maybe, yeah, maybe, maybe. Or at least can compartmentalize it a little bit, right? Maybe.
I think again, this I think comes back to what I said at the very beginning. When we do what we do, and we're a conduit to whatever story is light, dark, all of these things, you have to accept you have to make peace with whatever is inside you. There are things about myself aren't necessarily good things, but they're part of who I am, right? And nobody here has what I call no one's perfect, and we all have things that we can work on and growth with still, no matter how old we get. Something I've been reflecting on lately is there's going to come a point in my life. I mean, I'm almost 40. There's going to come a point in my life when I may not be so quick to grow and change because I'm going to be very comfortable with who I am. I think that's part of growing older too. And the thing about that though, it occurred to me was, you have to, again, there's a point when we explore whatever it is we're exploring, light and dark, we're going to have to find out some hard truths about ourselves. And sometimes we're not ready for those things. Maybe part of what happened to Truman when going down his dark path, he just saw parts of himself he just was not comfortable with. I get the feeling with I know this for sure with Miss Julie. I don't know Anita quite as well. Right? We've all kind of had to kind of face our own inner demons at some point or another, and we've all had to come up with our own answers to those things on our own. And that's part of that journey as well. When you are in a position where you are it's you and whatever, just that silence, right? I don't think there's a situation where you cannot help but learn things about yourself. Some of these things are awesome, but some of these things are also very unsettling because none of us look. Again, I'm no saint. I try to be a good guy, but there are parts of me that aren't so good. And I know what they are, and I can be very, very honest with myself, but I can still accept and love who I am, and that's a big part of that process too, of being able to handle that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure everyone that goes into that space the first few times is ready for everything they see. And the last thing I'm going to point out is there's in this life there's almost a point of you can't unsee things after a certain point. You can't unsee. And some of us can't forget, and that is when, if you're not ready for certain things, it can break you. If you are, cool. but some people just aren't. And the thing is, like healing, part of healing is being forgetful. I just realized this during the last year. Part of trauma is not being able to forget. And when you have that combination of being not ready for what you see, and unable to forget what you see, it can wreck you. It can totally destroy you.
And that's the Truman story in a nutshell. I mean, here's a guy who spent his entire life masking he had mechanisms and things he could placate and things that he could project that would, show who he was in public when he wasn't that in private. And those lines blurred for him. He didn't know how to be that person with the prisoners that he was talking to. And he tried to be real, and he started to realize that the real Truman was kind of fake in a lot of ways, and it kind of fucked him up because of that. It just messed with his head, and he didn't know how to get, well, like you said, once you unsee it, he can't go back there because he didn't know how to do it anymore, because when he did it, it seemed even more fake than it really was. So it's crazy. Paul White says most actors like to play the bad guy. They say it gives them more room to explore the depth of the character. I think it's no different for writers. You can play around with the characters facets so much more when they're an anti-hero.
Yeah. There's a difference between an anti-hero and a bad guy, though. Like there are some big differences between the two. There are some similarities as well. I think we all like playing characters that aren't perfect. Like have these antagonistic qualities. The thing about an antagonist, and this is the freedom of it, whether you're an actor or an artist, is you can say and do anything you want, and as long as it's in the context of the story. The only trick with that is you have to make sure that your bad guy or your antagonist or whatever you want to call him, or her or whatever, has credibility. If they have to have the reason has to be something people can connect to, whether it's what they want or who they are or like something like that, or if they say they're going to do something, they do it, because it's the only way to keep them a threat.
Mm-hmm. One thing that this article brought up that I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit too was the idea of keeping busy. The idea of like if you occupying your mind, the loneliness doesn't creep in as much, but then you get a different kind of loneliness because, again, solitary for writers is solitary, but you can get lost in what you're doing. And so I was kind of curious from everybody's perspective what they thought of that idea. Is there something to that? Keeping busy is the way to occupy the mind, or is that not how you approach it?
Yeah, it is, but I think it's kind of a temporary or a delusional thing almost, because you're not eliminating the problem, you're just hiding from it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree. I think like you could just add tasks and add tasks and add tasks, but once you get tired and stop, you got to face, like Josh mentioned it before too, you got to face what's really going on in your head. Like for me, I'm really goal oriented. So regardless of COVID, I've been working on my own for years, and I have certain things I just really want to accomplish. And I'm really good at looking, okay, a year from now, if I want that, what do I have to do like the month before, 2 months before, today, tomorrow? But I also like my fitness and outdoor time. That's actually a really meditative thing for me. So when I go out on a long bike ride or a hike, it's like Josh said, you can't hide then from whatever's going on, or maybe you're struggling with, or wherever you're at, you can't hide from it. And I guess I've learned how to embrace that. And I prefer to step into the pain or the discomfort than to avoid it. Because I think, like has just been pointed out here, you could get as busy as you possibly can, but once you stop, you're going to have to deal with what's going on up here, whatever's going on. And so I think a good balance between goal setting and challenging yourself mentally, but then also physically and the rest of your health as well, and learning how to slow down and really deal with whatever is going on. I think that's really important.
Do you think burying yourself in writing though could do that? Could be that kind of. I mean, it's a different adrenaline, right? I mean, adrenaline flows through you when you're exercise, so that brings up a lot of stuff too. I would assume.
Short term, sure. I think I need it. Like I think, look, we put enough tasks in front of us. There is a point, especially if it's a survival mode kind of deal, right? You will be occupied in those tasks because sometimes the biggest challenge is just getting through the day. Listen, my existential crisis doesn't matter right now. I need to eat. I've been there, right? I've been there, right? You prioritize what's important, and you can do that for a little while. Like, it's amazing what you can carry when you need to.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's a point where things get heavy, and I think the key word, I think that to sum up what Anita's saying in a slightly different thing is, you can distract yourself, right? And you can hide and talk yourself out of it and say, there's no problem with me. I just got all these things to do, right? And that's bullshit. Like, I mean, right? There is a point, no matter who you are. Again, sometimes you have immediacy. There is a certain immediacy to some other things. But I don't care what you got going on in your life. Sooner or later, you got to confront the person you see in the mirror, because you can't run and you can't hide. Well, you can run for a little bit, but you can't hide. Right? Yeah. So.
But Joda, also to answer your question a little more too, you said going real deep in your writing. Can that be a way to work through things? And I definitely think it can too. I mean, if you're dealing with, if character's dealing with something and you're feeling that, for me, it is like journaling, and it is like purging what it feels like to feel that way. So definitely letting myself go deep into a writing session can be very therapeutic. I guess I was more talking about tasks like if you're trying to learn how to sell books and you're doing presentations and you're packaging books together and checking your Amazon ads and like all that other stuff, are tasks, and you could totally just busy yourself. But I think both what I was talking about with going for bike rides or whatever it is you like to do and getting deep into your writing, those both can be very therapeutic for sure.
I don't know. I know some people who have anxiety attacks about marketing, so it can be,
which is so strange to me, because it's the same skill. It's the same thing.
It is.
Well,
you have to be more in front of people. I think that's the
but you're still, it's still storytelling. Like ultimately, that's what you're doing is you're trying to establish a relationship with your audience. That's your goal when you write a book. So what's marketing? It's just marketing is I'm in front of people going, hey, my book is awesome, because you worked your ass off on it. You should think it's awesome. And you're right. And so, but it's about you got to establish a relationship with your audience. That's just the way it is, guys. It's that any author, even before in the days where the traditional did the majority of the work, good authors still establish relationships with their readers, because it's just good business.
Do you think it's easy to tell when somebody's distracted in terms of their writing? Do you think you can fake it, or do you feel like there's a loss of authenticity a little bit when somebody's? Have you ever read something and you go, "This seems very plastic. It doesn't seem like there's any emotion behind it, or any?"
Not plastic exactly, but sometimes there's So I remember reading The Stand by Stephen King.
That's a good one. That's a good example.
Yeah, right. And the first 100 pages are awesome. Like, they are phenomenal. The last, like, I'll say
750.
Well, no. The last 200 are really good too. Like when you get to the final end, but you could sense after that beginning, he wasn't. There are points in there, like you just had that sense, like, okay, where do I go from here? I mean, I've written myself into this corner. Fuck, what do I do? And that's kind of like what I felt like when I was reading it. I think so. I've mentioned this on my own podcast. There's I draw now, and there's this like thing about when you draw, like how a kid draws. It's one of the hardest things to do, And the reason it's so hard, it's not the technique. Technique is not it. We have this ability for whatever reason when we are authentic about what we're writing about or what we're doing or where we're going. There is this for somehow some way because we all have to some degree or another a bit of empathy. It translates on the page, all right, and to translate that feeling. You could technically read a technically very good story and not feel a damn thing from it. And the reason you won't feel a damn thing from it is because the writer did not put, it might be very good, like it might be good writing, but I don't think you can do great. I think on some level, like the person writing that story at least has to buy into the moment of what they're doing. And when you read this, like, and I mentioned Stand, it's not that the Stand's a terribly written book, it's actually written okay, but you could tell like when like in the middle of the story how to get to the end and how to bridge that gap to the end. I don't know if he'd write it the same way today. Like I think that guy was the guy that wrote that wasn't sure where to go. Okay, I get to this really cool thing, I set up this great battle, now what do I do? Fuck. And that's literally what I felt like when I read that.
Yeah, you can tell when the author's heart isn't in the story. So.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then for me, like if I'm not connected or whatever, but I know I need to just practice writing, I'll just do it because I can go back and revamp that section or even just throw it away. But it's just, I think it's good practice to write even when you don't want to, but it doesn't mean I'll necessarily use it because I agree if I read it back and it's like, yeah, I'm not here, you know, then I don't want to give that to my readers for sure.
Paul had another comment here. He says, we must all live lives beyond the keyboard. I find it comforting to isolate myself from the world while I focus on writing. Even now I'm alone. I still close off from the real world when I write. And yes, I'm lonely at the moment, but writing is also a chosen escape, which is another great point. I mean, it is, you know, as much as it is facing reality, sometimes it's also escaping reality that helps you in certain respects, and that can be a tool to do that, right? So
yeah,
I think Julie brought it up very well, is that writing is sometimes a very good form of journaling, because no matter, like I said earlier, we put pieces of ourselves into our stories. So we and the fact of the matter is those feelings, those emotions we are feeling when we write whatever it is we're writing, that's real. That's as real as it gets. And for somehow, some way, I mean, that's our real gift. Like our voice, whatever that voice is, it's not the story we're telling. It's the voice we have when we tell it. Mm-hmm. And that's the real secret. And so
that's the secret to marketing too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, because again, marketing is storytelling, right? Right. So I mean, when you get right down to it, guys, don't worry about the sales. Worry about the story you're telling. That's actually the best advice I'm going to give you for marketing today, because that's another episode. But the thing I was trying to say there is, no, it's because I create a world in my head. Listen, I'm right now writing Alice on a pirate version of the Argo, heading into the entrance into the underworld, where Jason's waiting for her to play a very, very interesting game of croquet. Now, if that doesn't sound wild, cool. I want to know, like, that's what I'm working on right now. That's a cool world to escape into, and that's great. Like I said, I'm in a weird spot because I still feel like I'm a stranger in the city I'm in because of COVID, because I haven't been able to really go out and meet people like I would in any other point. So I'm in this like weird thing. It's like, I'd really like to go on a date. I really, really would. I'm just being very like, that would be wonderful and awesome. But I'm also in a place right now where buying underwear is right now not a thing. So it's really hard to actually meet people and do things. And you think that's funny, but it's also the truth. That's where I'm at right now. And so it's a very interesting time. But Paul is right. Like, we all must have lives beyond the keyboard, beyond, because we're not complete human beings without it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I took myself out on a date last night and ate at a restaurant for the first time in 11 months, 12 months. So it's like it was cathartic. It was just, I don't care. I almost didn't care what the food was or what it tasted like. It was just being in that experience again and being away from this little room that I stay in most of the time. And it's just like, especially when I'm eating, and it's just like, it was nice. I spent a little extra time there just because I wanted to soak in the ambiance a little bit more. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to going out next week and buying socks. So
yeah, we're Candace fucked up. That's all I'm gonna say right now.
Well,
Candace.
no, we're not too fucked up over here in Nova Scotia. We are in a bit of a lockdown, but I got my vaccine, so I can go out and go around. But yeah, I have to go buy socks and new shirts. And, yeah, looking forward to going to Giant Tiger. So that's my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost to the point where going to Tim Hortons would be a nice change for you guys, right?
If it's like
I don't mean to stick the knife in deeper.
No. I'm just saying, if it's like this in the fall, I'm crossing the border. I just don't care. I'm just gonna go and live a life again because I'm done.
Yeah, and that's it about solitude too, right? You get to a point where you just need some kind of interaction. You start talking to trees and pets and stuff because you just need something to talk back to you. You need it because that's the human nature of everything, right? We're human after all.
I think the important thing to understand, and this took me a very long time to figure out fully myself personally. You don't need to be alone all the time. And I think that's an honest, like, I think the biggest lie writers tell themselves is that writing is always a solitary process. There are points, we're talking about a very specific point in the writing process. You still got editors, beta readers, you have, like in my case, I have an illustrator. Man, you should see the cover for this. It's the poor guy. It's sweet. Oh my God, it's sweet. Writing is a solitary process in the point of creation. Mm-hmm. But after that, you are literally surrounded by people that will go out of their way to help you, right? So even in this, you're not really truly alone. I think it's the biggest lie we tell ourselves. But there are points we need that solitude, but inevitably we're all designed to connect to each other. That's the human condition. We are designed to be a social species. That's why I make an ass myself on the air virtually every night, because it's part of the social. You need that connection.
Well, I'm sorry, Julie. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, I was going to add to that. That's a really good point. Yeah. I actually recently learned, and I'm just a few years into my fiction writing life, so people might already know this, but there's a lot of collaboration going on, like writing full novels collaboratively, building anthologies collaboratively. And so I've been really fortunate to, when I saw this going on and I saw how much fun people were having, I put it out there to myself that I want to be part of that. And I actually found a collaborator a lot sooner than I thought, and we're deep into some work together. And I'll tell you, like, he's halfway across the world, but it's a really thrilling thing. You can actually find these connections locally or not locally and do a split between your own work and work with other people. And if it's the right collaboration, it can really just change your world of writing, at least for me. So just a thought, if people haven't pursued that, it's out there. It's easy to find, actually.
Yeah. I know a writer. She's got a Discord that just does collaboration. So
nice.
Yeah, that's her whole thing.
Yeah.
I also think, I also think that there's something to be said for walking away from your solitude. Like taking that moment to, like, if you get stuck or if you're done, just taking that moment to get away from wherever you are writing and just go somewhere and be somewhere, do something different, talk to somebody, talk to a human person, interact with people. And you'll find that that's a refreshing thing that happens, that they kind of lifts your spirit. It kind of gets you back into like thinking mode, and that is going to help you when you do come back to it and sit down and decide to rewrite or edit. And I've always done that. I've always walked away from the moment I've finished creating something. Yeah, I might hand it off to somebody else to take a look at it or whatever, but I will not look at it for a little while. I'll walk away from it just because I don't want to be tainted by, you know, what the headspace I've just been in, but also because I've been in solitude for however long it took me to write that. And so I want to get out of that headspace because I'm going to be in a different headspace when I start editing and rewriting, right? So,
Yeah.
But like I said, we're all human beings at the end of the day. We all desire connection. And I mean, that's why we write too. We have something we feel we need to say that we want to share with as many people as possible. And we're being very honest with ourselves. That's why we write. So, or we draw, or we make music, or we collaborate, or whatever it is we choose to do, right? The real secret is we all feel like we have something to say to each other, which is why I'm talking right now, because I feel like I have something we're saying, right? And but we also know we're saying to each other, and that it's a reminder that we're not alone, even when we feel that our loneliness.
Yeah.
It's also a great segue into what we're about to experience, which is another connection. CL Cannon every week connects us to some indie books from a popular trope or series or book itself, or even she did comic books a couple weeks ago, so that was pretty cool. But we'll do the indie connection, and then we'll come back and have a little bit more interaction and connection, and then say goodbye. So enjoy, everybody.
Hey guys, CL Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another indie connection. Today I'm going to be telling you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Ryan Grodin's Invictus. The first book I have for you is called Time Trap by Micah Cada. Rayan wakes up in a strange place called Albuquerque with no memory of how she landed in a desert where she's captured. While the authorities search for a way to identify her, she's sent to an unusual institution where she's shocked to see paper. When a power inside her manifests unexpectedly, she opens a portal, sending her and two unlikely sidekicks to a place harboring a deadly secret that can destroy this world and the future. All she wants is to regain her memory and go home. The only person who can help her is an elite fighter of the future who is trapped in a fantastical world where killing the enemy and surviving is all that matters. With one impulsive action to save a child, she proves she's his enemy. The second book I have for you is called Skip by Perrin Briar. A mysterious clock controls time. What happens when it breaks? The clock tower is the center of the town of time. It counts down the hours, minutes, and seconds of every passing day. Unbeknownst to the local inhabitants, it is at the center of a great deal more than that. It is the center of the universe and controls time itself. But it is old and beginning to break, setting the world's inhabitants skipping forward and back through time. 17-year-old Jera Withnos, betrothed to marry a powerful lord, runs to escape her responsibilities and pursue her dream of traveling the world. Hot on her heels is her betrothed, moving heaven and earth to find her before the wedding day. Elian Stump is an outlaw on the run from a bungled heist, but he carries with him a dangerous secret that threatens to either free or ensnare the world. They confront sinister forces at every turn, hell-bent on preventing them from achieving their goal, and taking control of the clock tower for themselves. The universe has chosen this unlikely pair to collect all 3 replacement clock pieces scattered across the world before the clock tower and time breaks for good. On their journey, they make friends and enemies, encounter strange and wonderful mythical creatures, and face their own internal demons. The third book I have for you is called Mark of Mars by Juliet Anderson. When Jenna joined the elite Macvale Institute, she never dreamt she and her fellow students would be sent back in time to study in ancient Rome. but not even time travel could prepare her for the series of events that occurred after she touches a statue of Mars. Jenna's aim is to keep a low profile, but when she runs into Senator Aurelius, Rome's leading senator within her first few minutes of arrival, and then picks a fight with Marshal of the Peace Marcus Villanus later that day, she realizes her trip is going to be anything but smooth. Despite being in a male-dominated society, Jenna can't bring herself to lose her 21st century attitude. Meek and subservient aren't words in her vocabulary. Jenna isn't the only one hiding her true identity. Marcus, Aurelius, and the rest of their family are Roman gods, living as mortals. Marcus realizes very early on that Jenna is no ordinary mortal. She possesses a power no mortal should have. She has the ability to kill a god. Marcus and Aurelius know Jenna is from another world. Can they really turn down the opportunity to learn about time travel? Marcus finds that keeping the streets trouble-free is a lot easier than trying to control an outspoken time traveler. With lots of sword fighting, horse racing, heated arguments, sibling rivalry, and an assassination plot to foil, life is anything but dull for Jenna and Marcus. Then there's the small matter of her troublesome birthmark. And the last book I have for you is called 7 Rules of Time Travel by Roy Huff. What if you could rewrite the past? Quinn Black is having the worst day ever, over and over again. The same car blocking his driveway, the same horrific accident he witnesses, the same cop that keeps preventing him from saving his boss from dying in it, and the same memory of a girl from his past that gets sharper each time. Then he realizes he has the power to travel through time and change the future. With infinite opportunities to alter the past, the possibilities are endless. Could he prevent terrorist attacks, natural disasters, the death of friends, or even go back in time and say the right thing to the girl who haunts his dreams? Unfortunately, the rules of time travel are more complicated than he imagined, and before long, Quinn is thrust into the greatest race in human history. His actions can either save the world or destroy it, and now the man who could turn back the clock is running out of time. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on Indie Connection. Bye!
Oh, that pesky time travel. So much involved with it. But that's a really great indie connection. I'm going to add one other book to that, and I'll put the link in there in the description for it too. It's a friend of mine. His name is Michael Stern, and he wrote a book. He actually wrote a series, a time traveling series, and Sandstorm is probably one of the best books about that kind of aspect of things. And it's very interesting, and he does a lot of great things with history and a lot of great research when involved in that. So I'll add that to the list. But as always, Courtney gives us some really great stuff to check out. And we've had a really great conversation today. And I wanted to finish it off by asking one more question. And that is, writing's a discipline. It's something that we learn and we perfect, we grow, we get better at. Is solitude something that we can get better at? Is solitude different for you every time? Every time you sit down to write a book, and, obviously the writing process is different, but is the solitude different? Do you feel any different? Do you feel like you grow from it, or, you've learned to, how to handle it better, or anything to that effect? Do you grow from solitude?
Yes and no. That's my answer.
All right.
I don't think you ever fully get used to it. I don't. I mean, some people, especially, and I've seen this towards the end of their life, they have like 4 cats, and like they're old and I don't want to be around any people anymore. I mean, that is a possible fate for a bunch of us, I'm sure. But I no matter what, that desire for connection is always there. However, as you get older / wiser, well, I may not be fun to talk about on that one. But as you get older, you recognize the fact that, like, for me personally, I'm just talking about like a relationship. I would love to be in a serious relationship with somebody. There's a part of me that would really enjoy that. But you come to the point where one thing about being in solitude teaches you eventually is you are fine on your own. You don't need to find something or someone or anything else out there that to complete you. You are complete on your own, and you can be very happy and content in that solitude. It's funny. I don't think you can actually be healthy and have good relationships with people without that willingness to be alone or to be in solitude, because it's a healthy boundary. It's like, what kind of people do I want to associate with? What kind of life do I want to live? And having those standards and boundaries for yourself, I think inevitably is a great thing. And I don't think you learn that any other way than with solitude. But at the same token, I do think we all need life. It makes life is much more fulfilling when you have things that you're doing beyond keyboards.
Yeah, I think you'd be more comfortable in solitude. And I would just like to say, as someone getting older, you become less tolerant of people, which is why you tend to go alone more, because you have less tolerance for crap as you get older.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I've grown in my solitude because I relish in the solitude of getting up really early and doing some really nice writing in my little sunlit office. So I've created a good space for that. But I also, when I say I've grown, is because I know when to cut myself off and go out into the rest of my life. And I'm really fortunate to have a lot of nature around here and a husband who we balance each other. Like, so if I need a break, then we can go do something together. I have someone to talk to. But even if he's not around, I can do my own activities or reach out to other friends. So I think I've grown in the way that I relish more in it, but I also balance it with the other stuff that I need so that I'm not alone all the time.
I agree with all that. I think, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a little different now, but it's not. It doesn't change or evolve, but it feels like I have a better grip on how to not be so lonely, I guess. I don't know, but it also could be that I'm not a good example because I have just gotten rid of a 12-year relationship. So it's like.
So can I be your friend for a second, Mr. Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me be your friend for a second. There, the one cool thing about being on your own, especially your morning. And I don't feel like that's a bad thing. You were with somebody for a significant chunk of your life.
Yeah. Right.
So I think all of us would in a similar situation. I mean, you could go the other way too. I know people that throw themselves into other situations but either way, it's mourning. I think you're recalibrating a little bit about what's important to you, and I think that's a good thing. Yeah. Also, something Anita said, I think that needs to be reemphasized too. It's true with all of us. I don't really have time for bullshit, and I just think what happens with when we get older is just like, okay, look, I like Julie, she's awesome. I don't know Anita as well as I know Joe and Julie. I'll hang out with Joe and Julie as much or as little as they want me to. And if they whether say, yeah, Josh, you need to be by myself, cool, right, because it no longer bothers me that people have their own lives and that they do. Like, you want to be that social butterfly a little bit. When you're older, you recognize the fact that it's healthy to have boundaries. It's healthy to have your own space in your own place. I mean, we all need that, right? It's just, and as you get even older, I can imagine your patience. I mean, you're one of those people. It's like, you know what? Fuck this. I don't got time for this bullshit. Fuck you. I got other things more important to do. And that's pretty much probably Anita's whole attitude, right? Right. But even so, we all are better. Like, there's also that place in life where you have other people in it. We all need that because honestly, I don't know about you, but my shit stinks. If nothing else, I need someone to keep me honest. So
yeah, it's important. It is. Yeah. It is very important. I also think it's important to have that, just because if you have that perspective, if It's just going to make you a better writer too. It's going to make you a better observer. It's going to make you a lot of different things that are going to help your art just as much. Going through life experience is the greatest teacher in terms of research and authenticity. And it really lends itself a lot of times to you can really tell when somebody's been through some shit, and when they write about it, and it feels real and just like wow, almost pathetic, in certain senses, So it's kind of, I think that all helps. So,
yeah.
So, Josh, where can people get more wisdom from you these days?
I do a podcast called Just Joshing. It airs live on Twitch, usually at 7 p.m. 4 days a week at least. Monday through Friday is generally when I like to do it. Occasionally I go on weekends as well. I also usually at the end of the week I usually draw, although this month it's only going to happen once. But I promise I still will be doing more drawings as we get into July. My next book, I'm going to make an announcement June 15th. It'll be very clear why when June 15th rolls around. It's going to be really cool to actually see and do. But without giving too much away, there's a certain sequel to my first book, Alice Zero. It came out last year. The book is going to be Alice One. And I'll talk more about that on June 15th. You can find me there. Find me on the website, jpantalleresco.wordpress.com.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you, my friend, for being here. I really appreciate it. Julie, where can people catch you?
Easiest place is killersanddemons.com. I put everything there. Jump on the newsletter. You get lots of information there. The third in the Detective Mahoney series will be early next year because I just launched number 2. But there is a collaborative horror anthology I'm part of that's coming out October 1st. So I'm really excited about that too. And if you jump on the newsletter or look at my website, I'm part of a horror writers collaborative on Facebook. It's a really cool group. So if you're a writer or reader and you just want some interaction, we do a cool book club. We have guest presentations, and then there's just lots of interaction that goes on there too.
Nice. Awesome. All right, Anita, where can people check you out at?
Well, they can find me on my website, afstewart.ca. And I'm over on Twitter on @scribe77, and I'm over on Facebook at my group AF Stewart's Minions. And my new cover site is afscoverdesigns.com.
Nice. Awesome. And you can see her here on our network when she does her show for us, which is Words That Kill. We have a new episode coming out next week, so we're excited about that. And we'll just keep... we've got some really good episodes coming up. I'm real excited about that.
Oh, yeah. Keep your eye out for the one with Mercedes Yardley, because that one was good.
Nice. Awesome. And the previous ones have been good. The one with Jay Lavelle is really fantastic. If you're a true crime fan, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of great stuff that's being talked about in that episode.
Yeah, well, I would like to say all the guests have been good.
Yeah. Good save. But welcome. For anybody who doesn't know, you're at GoIndieNow, so thank you very much. While you're here, you can subscribe, hit the like button, do whatever you need to do, comment, yell at us. I don't care. Just interact. We love when you interact, as we so often say. I want to mention to everybody, today is kind of a unique day for GoIndieNow because at 2:00 Eastern, I think. 2:00 Eastern. We'll be premiering our next episode of Genres, so right after this show here in a little bit. And if you didn't get warm and fuzzy from this episode of This Week in Indies, you'll get warm and fuzzy from this episode of Genres, because it's all about that wonderful, beautiful romance. Oh, so and you'll be surprised what you hear in this episode. I think don't dismiss it. Don't be quick to dismiss, because I think we're going to give you some reasons why, if you're not a romance fan, maybe you should be. So come and check that out. I'll be live in the chat, hanging out. So come and hang out with me, and we'll watch. It's only 30 minutes, so if you got 30 minutes, I would really appreciate you coming by and hanging out with us. If not, and you're seeing this after the fact, The show should be up after the fact, so go check it out. And you're always welcome to leave comments and tell us all about it. And I'd be very interested to find out if you weren't a romance fan going in and you watched it and decided to pick up some of these books that from some of these authors that talked about it and became a romance fan. That would be really interesting. But with that being said, it's so romantic to always go indie now. So it's always time to go indie now. With such love and affection, we say goodbye. Hello, take care, everybody. Have a wonderful week.